Imagine, it's late November 2021. Lagos is finally shaking off the heavy grips of the COVID-19 lockdown. Nightlife is breathing again, and dirty December is just around the corner. You wake up, open TikTok, and you hear this incredibly smooth, highly infectious Afrofusion track playing in passing on your feed. It's got the bounce, the cadences, the exact auto-tuned vocal inflections of a brand new artist straight out of the mainland. You shrug and think, okay, this is a massive vibe, and assume it's just another upcoming Nigerian boy trying to make a name for himself. That was my exact experience as a Nigerian Kpop fan when a song called Bolo first leaked onto the timeline. But by the end of the exact same day, the illusion completely shattered. My sister, who is fiercely averse to K-pop and avoids the genre like the plague, walked into the room and shoved her phone into my face and was visibly upset. She looked at me and said, "They are finally ripping off Afrobeats." That was the moment I discovered the track wasn't recorded in a studio in Lagos. It was produced in Seoul, South Korea, by a well-respected hip-hop artist named Penomeco. And the second the music video finally crossed over to the broader African diaspora on Twitter, take a guess what happened. The entire internet erupted into absolute chaos. You see, Bolo is literally Nigerian pidgin English slang for a fool, or someone who is incredibly easy to trick. But the title wasn't just the surface. When African listeners hit play, they realized Penomeco wasn't just sampling a standard percussive rhythm. He was actively modulating his voice to explicitly mimic the precise accents and cultural identities of West African artists. He later shared he was inspired by Burna Boy and Wizkid, but Afrobeats fans felt like he was trying to reheat their nachos / wear their vocal skin like a mask, so it felt less like creative appreciation and more like a sonic costume. But the controversy surrounding Bolo wasn't just a simple case of a corporate entity getting called out by the public as usual. What happened next completely fractured the internet into three distinct ideological lines. On one side of the battlefield, you had local Nigerian K-pop stans like myself. For us, stumbling onto Bolo initially felt like a moment of pure euphoria and validation. Proof that the sound of Lagos had finally traveled across the globe to inspire high-level creative appreciation. We loved the song, and frankly, a lot of stans didn't care who sang it. This was mirroring the desire of an artist like Arya Starr, where she said in an interview that she loves that Afrobeats is traveling across continents.
Where would you like to see the Afrobeats African music genre?
I want it to be the #1 genre in the world. Everywhere, all over the world. I know I don't want it to be, I don't want it to get like diluted, but I love the fact that people have their own translations of Afrobeats. People are trying different, there's now Korean people are doing their own Afrobeats, American people are doing their own Afrobeats. It's kind of cute and it's kind of it's lovely to see because we've come such a long way. We deserve it.
But on the other side of the screen, the African diaspora, who are no strangers to navigating institutional bias and the commercialization of black spaces in the West, instantly raised a massive red flag. They knew exactly how fine the line between appreciation and appropriation was. They pointed out a glaring, uncomfortable irony that standard K-pop fans wanted to ignore. How can an entire international industry be so utterly obsessed with extracting our rhythms and copying our accents, while the actual continent of Africa remains completely locked out of major K-pop world tour templates?
I don't go feel take your insult, rubbish. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Time from the front and I fuck from the back. Shit from the front and I fuck from the back. Cause my guys call you Cristiano. Tell me baby are you Ronaldo?
They grew deeply weary of an industry that treats West African rhythm as a profitable software update, but rarely holds a single live concert for the local fans who sustain the genre. The timeline became an absolute echo chamber. Local stans, fiercely protective of the music, began aggressively shouting down the diaspora, accusing them of overanalyzing a good vibe. Meanwhile, smack dab in the middle, everyday Nigerians who had zero interest in K-pop were dragged into the fray, looking at the entire phenomenon with deep skepticism and asking a simple protective question. Why are these corporate industries trying to clone our sound? But while the internet was fighting over accent, major entertainment executives in Seoul weren't backing down. They realized that African rhythm wasn't just a subgenre, it was an absolute goldmine. In March 2023, SM Entertainment, which is one of the big three music labels in Korea, tested the structural blueprint. They bought the rights to a heavy, hypnotic, Afro-Latin dance track by a Bulgarian artist named Dara, restructured it and handed it to the EXO's Kai. The result was Rover, a track that completely hijacked the internet, and not gonna lie, as a former K-pop fan, my hips were moving.
Come for me, you can get the best of me. Put it on drive mode, Mr. Rover. I'm coming over, Mr.
And by the spring of 2024, the full corporate takeover went into overdrive. Within a span of 60 days, multi-million-dollar groups under the mega conglomerate HYBE began dropping tracks that directly adopted contemporary African club sounds. SSERAFIM, a girl group, dropped Smart, fully committing to the syncopated West African grooves. Weeks later, 17th Performance Unit released Spell, a track that featured the unmistakable heavy pitching log drums of South African Amapiano. Now, if you think this sudden cross-continental love affair was just an organic creative coincidence amongst the artists, think again. Enter this guy, Bang Si-hyuk, the billionaire chairman of HYBE. You know, the same group that brought up BTS, yes, that BTS. In a major industry briefing, Hitman Bang openly admitted to the press that the traditional K-pop model was facing a massive global growth crisis, with Western streaming numbers slowing down. His explicit corporate strategy to save the company's bottom line, he stated the industry needed to actively acquire and inject rapidly growing global genres, specifically naming Latin music and Afrobeats, into the K-pop factory line to capture new international audiences. Mind you, at the time, Latin music and Afrobeats were topping the charts, so it wasn't a creative awakening, it was a boardroom mandated survival tactic. But let me tell you what the real kicker is. This industrial factory line approach to music isn't a new strategy that was invented in Seoul. If you trace back the DNA of modern K-pop trainee system all the way back to its roots, you land squarely in Detroit, Michigan, inside the headquarters of Motown Records in the late 1950s and 60s. Motown's founder, Berry Gordy, pioneered the exact assembly line model that K-pop relies on today. From the scouting of raw talent, putting them in a rigorous internal charm school to control their public image, meticulously polishing their choreography, and manufacturing flawlessly packaged groups to achieve the massive crossover appeal, they did it all, even down to the photo cards. Yes, the photo cards. So when the founding fathers of modern K-pop agencies went to America in the 1980s, they pulled a copy my homework but make it different and brought it back to South Korea and industrialized it to a degree that the world had never seen before. And along with Motown's business model, they also adopted a very specific corporate habit, a long historic track record of aggressively riding the coattails of whatever black musical sounds happened to be trending globally. From 90s hip-hop and New Jack Swing to EDM, UK garage, is it American trap? The soul pop machine has always retooled its factory lines to replicate those exact frequencies. So when corporate executives looked at the global rise of Afrobeats and Amapiano and say, We need to inject this into our music to save our metrics. They aren't pivoting creatively. They are simply treating it as reheating the naturals of black sound and wearing it like the latest Fortnite skin. But as the corporate studios were manufacturing these sounds from high-tech boardrooms in Seoul, a completely different story was unfolding on the ground. A story that proves that Nigerians don't actually hate outsiders enjoying our sound. We just want our culture to be respected. Enter South Korean content creator SillyMusic, also known to millions as Afrokitty. When she first started uploading to TikTok from her room and the streets of South Korea, she was just doing raw, unpolished vocal covers of popular Nigerian hits, actively trying to learn the language and master the distinct cadences. When her videos initially landed on Nigerian TikTok, the reaction was heavily divided. Some critics instantly wrote her off as cringy or dismissed her as just another foreign creator grifting for easy African engagement numbers. But a massive wave of local music lovers saw past the awkwardness. They recognized a genuine, deep-seated joy in her content. They loved the fact that someone all the way in Seoul appreciated Afrobeats enough to build an entire page around it. Her community grew exponentially, but she wasn't content just farming views from a distance. In August of 2024, she packed her bags and officially touched down in Lagos, and the hospitality she received was legendary. In a viral clip, she revealed that iconic Nigerian superstar Olamide literally stepped in to sponsor the logistics of her stay, gifting her financial backing to make sure her time in the country was seamless while they collaborated. For over a year, she didn't just take photos, she completely immersed herself in the environment. She shot videos with local creators, musicians, and comedians, experiencing the food, the people, and the lifestyle with pure, unfiltered happiness. She even ended up making a few music videos, original songs, original Afrobeat songs, before she left. And fans loved her so much that her TikTok follower count completely skyrocketed to over 2.5 million. There were even clips of her at a Davido concert, looking like the ultimate fan, being the only one in her section screaming and singing every single lyric at the top of her lungs. In a recent video, after she returned to South Korea from her second or third visit in Nigeria, she posted a video talking about how her comments was flooded with fans asking her to come back home to Nigeria, but instead of Lagos, to pick a different state and come and visit. Local Afrobeats lovers have zero hate for her because her career grew through genuine human connection, reciprocity, and real-life immersion, the exact opposite of a cold corporate extraction strategy. So this brings us to why Nigerians are angry with Kpop fans. History has shown us what happens when a massive global industry systematically clone grassroots sounds. We've seen it happen to jazz, to blues, and to rock and roll, where the original creators are slowly pushed to the margins while a sanitized version is sold to a market that historically loves black culture but rejects black faces. They love our rhythms but hate our blues. I mean, inspiration is beautiful, and cross-cultural exchange is what makes music great. But true exchange requires equity, reciprocity, and respect. Local fans will always embrace someone who sits at the table to share the meal joyfully. But the moment global K-pop factories try to treat our culture as free open source material to fix their corporate quarterly earnings, that's where we draw the line. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive into the Nigerian internet drama that the rest of the world may not be aware of. Let me know your thoughts on this pipeline in the comments below, and I will see you in our next video.